everybody, welcome back to my channel. We're on number 14. I can't believe it. I'm having so much fun in this art journal. Make sure you get one if you can, like this, that's got watercolor paper, because it's heavier and it can take a lot more that you throw at it. Let's put it that way. So I'm going to clamp the top left because the book's getting thick on the left side. And then we'll get started. So we finished doing last time glittery gold with some beautiful, soft, delicate, feminine colors. This time I'm going to go bold. I want to go collage. I'm determined today I want to use some tissue prints because it's been a while and I made them for this reason. So I'm excited, but as you know, I never know. I might plan that just like I did there, and then things could change in 10 minutes. It's all intuitive, and I encourage you to trust your intuition after a while. It's not easy at first, but once you learn to do it, you know, you think you're making mistakes, but it's just paper. Remember that it's just paper. It's a book with just paper in it. And speaking of paper, I want to protect the paper. What I did was my typical mark making background with pencil crayon, and I only do that to get started, to get into my zone. I don't have any thoughts about what I'll do to tie in these pencil crayon marks later on. They just got thrown down there very intuitively, organically, sometimes with my left hand, just to put some marks down and get started, so that we're not dealing with a blank page, which can be very intimidating for some people. So I'm protecting it with a complete coat of matte medium so that it's not as if I'm protecting the pencil crayon marks. What I'm doing is protecting that fragile paper so that I can throw a whole bunch of paint and water and inks at it, and it will be able to survive that. And now it's dry, by the way. I've sped I edit this so you don't have to watch me drying. So I've got a dispenser here, a fine liner dispenser. I got these on Amazon. It's a set of 2. This one's the finer, and I use it for black and white and sometimes an accent color. And what I did was I just scribbled it, and then I have the fun of spraying water on it and watching it disperse. And because I've got a coating of matte medium on the paper, none of that's absorbing right into the paper. It's just sitting on top of the matte medium surface. Before it dries, I want to dab a little bit of it back. I'm really having fun with the feathery effect of this. And I know I'm not going to keep all of it because I never do, but I never know what part I want to keep until midway through the process, sometimes even later. And if you don't start with something, you've got nowhere to go. So you might think it's wasteful that I put a whole bunch of stuff on the page and then I dab away, but that's just to give me, again, something to start with. And sometimes I see the results are amazing, and sometimes I look and I go, I don't think I like that. So far I love the pattern and the rhythm and the movement of these lines. I really do like them as they are, but I don't know where this is going. It's very bold. And I guess the trouble I have with bold black like that, so much of it as well, is that it can interfere with paints over top and make it look dirty. So I'm still thinking about how much of this black I want to keep. But what I like to do, as I said, is throw down a bunch of rhythm and then decide which parts of that I want to keep. So I'm giving this a good blow dry. I really like the rhythm of this. It reminds me if you take a boucle yarn and throw that around the page with the featheriness of it. I like that. It's really a lot of fun, but it is a lot of black on the page. And I need to bring some of that paper look back. So I want to, my first thought though, before I do anything drastic, is I want to make a glaze of full paste white paint, 1/3 and 2/3 matte medium, and I give that a good mix in one of these little dessert applesauce or pudding container lids. I keep them and they make great containers. So what I want to do is I've seen that there's a bunch of ovals and circles in there, and whenever I see that so obviously and there's a real rhythm and pattern to it, I want to bring that out and make that a bit of a focal point. So I'm using this glaze to clean out the center of those ovals because I want to keep it looking clean. And I like the straight edge of the brush tip there on the inside of these yarn loops. I like to keep the outside of the yarn loops fuzzy and erratic like they are because that's fun. But I would like the juxtaposition of having the inside really smooth and crisp and the outside being fuzzy. I think that's fun. So what I'm doing again, I'm just looking around to see what I can fill in as an oval or an interesting oval shape. And I'm really happy with that. It really brings it forward what's happening. It's starting to create a little bit of a story as far as what it wants to be. So I'm shooting some of this because this is a glaze. When I press hard on it, it's more transparent, and I'm using it as a glaze just to shoot some of this black yarn look into the background and keep some of it in the foreground. But as I'm doing this, I already know, based on a previous video that I did, that when I went over some black like that and left it gray and then put my happy, bright, cheerful colors over it, it made them look dirty. And then I spent all this time trying to fix that to make it not look dirty. And so rather than do that, I'm going to start off using full, this is right out of the tube now, full paste of the white paint, and I'm using my finger to smudge it all around so I can bring it back to the white look of the paper. The only problem with that is the smoothness of the paint when it dries versus the roughness of the paper creates two different surfaces that my future fluid inks will sit right there where I'm pointing it out. You can see it's going to be smooth where the paint is and rough where the paper is. So in order to not, because if I leave it as it is and then put my washes of happy colors over top, you're going to see those ridges of where the white paint was. And I don't want that to be the case. I want it to look like this is all paper background. I'm going to peel away that because it's stuck and flip it to the smooth side. Anyway, what I want to do is smudge around full white paste from the tub all around, wherever there's even just, I'm not even just at this point covering up black. I'm trying to coat the paper so that I have a smooth paint layer everywhere. It's not a perfect layer. There's still fragments of the paper showing through, but at least it'll be more random and it won't look like, you know, white paint strokes with color over it. You'll see what I mean once we get there, but that's what I'm trying to do here, is bring it back to the paper look. And I don't see that all that stuff I covered up, I don't see that as a disaster or a waste. I see that as me doing all that to make this opportunity come forward. And that's how I kind of intuitively work all my abstracts. And if this was a canvas, you know, treat this, because the pages have been coated, treat it as if it is a tough canvas. And if you don't like something, you can paint over it. When I do my abstracts on canvas, I've got at least a dozen layers. There's no shame in that. The whole way of doing some fun mixed media art journals is to do those layers. Take risks, take chances, have fun. If you don't like it, paint it over. And I never know half the time if I'll like it or not. Half the time I don't know what the result will even be until it happens, and then I decide that mistakes are happy mistakes. So have that attitude. Keep an open mind, and you'll be amazed at what you can achieve. So I really love the balance of the thready looking yarns on the right, the big oval on the left, and the black dot on the left, and then following up on the bottom right, that bit of black. To me, that gives a really happy rhythm, movement, and balance. And I hope I can maintain that. The whole point now is, I remember I brought out tissue papers with the white prints on them. I know now that that's the last thing I want to do, is put those white prints over top of all of my underpainting here. So in order to do that and make it effectively show up, I need to do bold bursts of color everywhere. That gives the best contrast, so that when I add those prints over top, some of these hints of these underneath colors will be revealed. So bear with me. It's going to look like a dog's breakfast for a while, but there is a reason for it all. And if you go back and look in my playlist, my very first art journal playlists with my 8x8 inch pieces, I talk about that, and I showed this where you put the bold colors and then the white prints over top. And then you have fun of even glazing those prints to blend in with your bold colors. So Go back and watch some of my first few videos and you'll see that that's where we're going right now. Because the paint is so smooth on the page, it's really easy to shoot some water on there and then let it disperse and spray and settle as it wants. If I would have done all that with just fresh paper uncoated with paint, it would have been absorbed into the paper more. But I can have the fun now of rocking this around and encouraging the flow of movement where I want it. So that's fun. I like doing that, and I like how it subtly disappears from dark to light. And look at how it dried, even lighter. I start off always doing lighter layers, lighter values and more watered down colors. And then later on, as I see where it's going, then I can add more intense values to the colors. Now this magenta is already very intense. So when I put it down, again, that's a very wet page on very smooth white paint. I can easily dab that away. I don't want it to stay that bright at this point. Look at the fun. This is my typical trick of making a pattern from the texture of the paper towel. It's not going to stay this way, but I love showing that to you. It's a good way of making pattern. If that was on uncoated white paper, that would have stayed as that pattern. But because this is so smooth, it's going to eventually disperse and dry smoother and not look so patterned. Play around with that. Try it on different backgrounds, that technique. It's a really, really fun technique, and you don't know what you're going to get till you practice and do it. And then you can apply that knowledge to future pieces of work. So after doing all that and showing you what it does, I'm dabbing most of that away because I want to keep the value of that pink similar to the value of the blue. Now I've got my Nicolazo Gold, Quinacridone Nicolazo Gold, one of my absolute favorites. Golden did stop making that. I'm not sure if they're continuing or not, but it's a beautiful color because when it hits the water like that, it goes very bright, almost like Indian yellow. But full strength out of the jar, it's deeper and it's just beautiful. Absolutely love it. So again, that looks like a strong ridge between the gold and the blue. That's going to become subtle. Look at that. And I love when I do this paper towel printing or texture. I love doing it as a two-tone. But watch, if you press down with your finger, then you see the finger shape. And that's something you have to be careful with. Again, practice it and play with it. My whole idea here is just to subtly start bringing forward a two-tone of pink and gold. And at this point, I'm just lost in the moment. I have no idea, other than those thready black lines that I laid down and balanced as I have them. The rest of the spread, I have no idea where I'm going. I do know I need to keep adding brighter color, more and more layers of bright colors, so that later, when I put those white tissue prints over, it's subtle. It makes the whole spread subtle. Right now, it's going to look very bold and crazy for a while. And because a bit of a theme here is to spray and let the water subtly, look at that pattern. Anyway, I'm constantly spraying and letting the water settle. And that gives you nice, as it dries, it gives you nice cloudy transitions between colors. So much fun watching what it does. That yellow and that gold and magenta blend well together. They're very complementary colors. Again, that goes on looking really dark, but I subdue it. But by the end of the spread, we will be left with bolder colors. This is just a start. This is just what I call my first underpainting. There'll be a mid underpainting, and then there'll be the final coat. Lots of layers. So because I've got higher intensity of magenta, I'm doing higher intensity of the Nicolazo Gold. I love watching what the two do together next to each other when they blend. Love doing that technique, so fun. The only thing with that technique is you have to let it air dry, which I did. That was edited out, but it dried a little lighter, but you can see how nice and fuzzy it spreads. There's not so much pattern anymore from the paper towel. So remember, these are the prints that I have to choose from. And again, what I want to show you is that when you place that print over it, all those areas where there's no white paint, where it's just tissue, that's going to disappear and become clear. So you can see that all those clear areas are going to pick up the bold colors underneath. And I wanted to just show you that you're going to end up with seeing squares. If I use that one, you'll see squares of white, but you're going to see all those transparent areas become the colors that are beneath. So it's really, really fun. So I'm not doing that right now. That's way near the end. I need to build more layers of bold colors. And I decided, let's get really bold and let's do collage. I had all these printed tissues with colors. These are all the colors I'm already using. So rather than take that tube of paint and paint that color down, I already have this on a printed tissue with already some interesting texture. So I'm going to use some of that. I love to have subtle textures and prints and patterns in my collages. And I'm starting with imagining it going there, but that can go anywhere. Quite often what happens is I do that, and then when it comes time to gluing them onto the page, I put them in a new spot because intuitively I just think to do that, and it always works out okay. So don't hold me to this position. I'm just thinking right now. And the nice thing about using printed tissues with colors like this versus painting that right onto the page is if you don't like it, you move it around and you can see by rotating your pieces where they look best on your page. So it's a really good trick. If you were to work on a painting, and even if you don't want to use collage, at least have a few pieces like this that you could place over top just to get an idea of where you want to put splashes of paint. And it gives you a good guide and a sense of what the results will be. Because I could have easily just painted that swirly yarn look, the one I'm peeling apart there. I could have easily taken that color and painted it on the page right now, but then it would be as it is. This way you can see I'm rotating, I'm trying to decide. It's such a good tool. Now that I've got that there, and I like how that blue yarn disappears into the blue background, so that's why I thought, well, maybe I'll take this other piece and do it on the right side. I mean, why not? It's my prerogative to change my mind and move things around. This is actually, take this as a really good lesson for how to build an abstract. Look at that. You can already see without putting paint down. So much fun. And if I don't use both of those or either of them today, I put them back in my stash with tissue prints, and they're there for me to use another time. That's a trick I use as well, is using clean water and a clean paintbrush, and I paint water around all the edges of where I want to tear away. And the reason why I do that instead of cutting around that shape is cutting would give a very strong, sharp edge to that tissue paper, whereas this way it makes it fuzzy. And when I glue it down with matte medium, a lot of that fuzzy tissue just disappears, and you can't even see that there was a tissue paper there at all. You can buy water paintbrushes that are a tube of water with the brush, and when you squeeze it releases the water just like that. But you don't need to use that. It's just an expense you don't need. Just use a clean brush and dip it in your water. Look how fun that is. That's just, again, I'm just playing around here, playing around with locations. Here's a bright. So what I'm going to do in this spread is this green I love. It's my it's my high flow acrylic green, yellow, green gold mixed with white paint. So I like what I'm showing you there is I like that rough edge, how it fades away and disappears into the right. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to keep the part where I'm tearing away there to the left, and I'm going to keep the right side of that where it's fuzzy, pointing out towards the blue. So anyway, I mixed that green with white, fluid white paint, which made it semi-opaque. And I like that because when I put that over top of the blue, I keep the integrity of that bright green. Whereas if I would have painted that down over the blue without a lot of white in the paste, it would have blended with the blue and made a green. And this way I keep the integrity of that color as it is because it was blended with a thick white paint. So I'm just finding a couple of shapes here. I'm thinking that this bright green that I'm talking about would be a good contrast color, which pops. To me, I always like to do that. And when I have a pop color, I like to have it in 3 locations, but in all 3 locations a different shape and a different treatment. So I've got the long strip on the top left. I've got these 2 oval shapes on the right, and I just want a little hint of it up in the top middle. So I found a section there with 2 dabs of this paint. One looks like a dot, like a circle. And I'm going to just keep that and shoot it up at the top there, right up there. And that's a balance of my 3 areas with that color. Some of that might get covered up later, but at least I've got those down in 3 areas. And hints of those will remain at the end. Even though I'm still at a building stage, as I put colors down, I try to keep them balanced as I go. So I tore away a little bit more of this gold, and I don't know, it's just a wonky piece. I haven't decided. I don't really like what I'm doing with it, but I'm going to keep it as an option. You know, you never know, but I don't like where it's placed right now. But again, if I would have painted that down, it would have been a bit of a mess to wipe it off and clean it up and get back to where I was. So I'm taking the pieces and putting them close to where I know they're going to go. And now I need to put matte medium all over the surface so that I can glue these babies down. And it looks like a lot of matte medium, but that's what interacts with the tissue paper and helps to dissolve it. So wherever there isn't paint on the tissue will dissolve and blend with the paint below. Look at that. It's just so fun it's just magic when you paint these down. How those clear areas that were clear transparent tissue become a thread of color from the below color. I just think that's amazing. What I love about the magic of this technique is you can't think of how to paint that. It just happens as you lay these down. So now where I used to have the thready look of yarn with the black, now it looks like on the top left I have thready yarn or blue yarn. It's just a really good trick. So the yarn, all those clear places of the tissue are going to show up. They're going to have strips of and details of colors below that you couldn't think of painting. They just get revealed. Now in this case I cut a straight line on the bottom of that tissue because I knew I wanted to line up with the bottom straight line of the page. Where I've got the bulk of that inner fold of the book, I'm using a very wide paint spreader to hold that in place as I glue down the left. And then I smush with the paint spreader there. I push hard in the seam so that that stays nice and attached, so that when it dries and I open the book, it doesn't bubble there. You want that nice and smooth and flat to the surface. That's fun. So now I've got the same Nicolazo gold. Well, actually, I think that was Quinacridone red, but they're similar. I've got that now as a printed pattern. And I'm going to put that green there where pretty much close to where I had it. I'm trying not to let it, I don't mind it overlapping some of the black, but I didn't want it to overlap all of the black. I don't mind those two spots that it's semi-transparent green, slightly covering the black. I think that's a fun effect. Now I've got that, get that big blue yarn tissue print down. Watch my videos on how to make that, because there is a video on making what I'm putting down here. Go back to them and see. There's about 3 or 4 videos on printing tissues. A lot of fun. I like how subtle it is over the blue, and then it becomes more obvious over the pink and gold. It's kind of a gentle look. If you smooth down with your finger like that, make sure you do it gently, because you could, if you press too hard, that tissue paper is very wet with the matte medium and it's very soft and vulnerable. So if you push too hard, you kind of destroy the tissue. Again, practice that. You'll get the hang of it. So let's get those 2 dots of green up there. So I've got my 3 places with the green. I had spillover from the previous spread from number 13, bled through the center seam up through the center fold of the book there. So I thought, let's take that strip and put it there as if we wanted it to continue up. And rather than have it focus on, I don't like things totally centered, so rather than have a completely centered line, perfectly centered line, I'm trying to off balance that a little bit, make it off kilter. So you're drawing the eye away from the center now. And again, this is all to keep flow and movement throughout the page. And when you put it down while it's still sopping wet with matte medium, it's a good time, if you don't want all of the tissue, just use your fingernail to tear some of that away like I did. So now that center gold line makes a little more sense with the rest of the spread. It's coming together really nicely. And I could have left it like that and then put the other prints over top and had a piece that's similar to where we end up later. But I like to show you techniques along the way, and I like to try. You don't know until you try. So I started off with this blue print here, and I like that, so I'm going to use it, and we'll see how long that works. It works right now in my mind, but later on it doesn't work, and therefore I'll change it, but that's okay. I don't know until I try. The purpose of an art journal is to experiment and explore, so that when you go and do similar things on a painting, you already know some results. I kind of like how it brings the eye over to the right page with the blue, and I like how those loopy lines of clear tissue end up picking up the gold below once I put it down. So to me right now this all makes sense, and it works, because I'm drawing the eye to the right of the page with that blue. You see that? So let's put it down. Let's go with it. And where we've got the look of a loopy yarn on in blue on the left, now it looks like we've got a loopy yarn on the right that's in gold, in the orangey gold. Right there. So it's picking up a similar theme, but doing the opposite in coloring. And while it's wet, I'm dabbing away with my fingertip, but it did disrupt some of that fragile, previously put down paper. So just lift that up and place it back where you want it. And then try not to overtouch it. It's very vulnerable. But what I wanted to do was, again, not have too much blue, make it look like more like it's an orange line, a yarn. So that's fun. I quite like the movement all around this page. And I could leave it like this, like I said. I quite like it exactly as it is. I could stop here. And let me know in the comments below if you prefer it like this or if you prefer where we ended up. I put an extra little bit of that green on top of that dot so that it would come forward more. Now I'm reminding you that I want to do a white print over top. And I've chosen this one because it's kind of wonky and I think it works. But before I put that down, I was just pointing there, I want to bring out more color in the background because that white print over top is going to hide a lot of this. And what I want to show through needs to be brighter. Now that is not the Nicolazo Gold, that's the Iron Red Oxide, I believe. I'll let you know in the notes. Sometimes I mix up reverse the name of it, but that's a similar family but a little deeper red. I think red iron oxide, I think it's called. And where I took it right out of the bottle on the bottom there, it's dark. And then I grab some of that and smush it around with this soft brush. Again, this might look very bold to you, picking up these colors darker and darker, but that's because I need them dark. But I'm going to undulate. I'm going to pick up the magenta as well. What I do to the one in value, I have to do to the others, just to keep the balance and weight around the page. So right there, it's quite dark. I'll leave that dark because I'm trying to make a transition. But when I have the Nicolazo Gold, the iron oxide red here, getting towards the magenta, I need the transitions between those colors to be softer. So that's when I don't do full strength and I smush it around in a more fuzzy way at the edges. Sometimes I'll even right there, what I was doing was I wiped the brush on a paper towel to get rid of some of that paint. So when I do this brushing now and smudging, there's no paint on the brush. It's just moving around the paint that was there and keeping it more subtle. So when I do something like this spot here, I press harder on the brush so it smushes instead of a solid paint stroke. Now in here, I'm pressing light and using the tip, and I'm making a purposeful paint stroke. So I'm playing around. Doing what I've just done has really dramatically altered the look of the bottom half of this spread. And you may or may not like it, and I may or may not keep it. As I do it, I'm trying to decide if I want to keep it or not. But when I start, I stay committed and I give it a try. I also don't always play it safe. If I was to do every single video with everything playing it safe with what I know and same colors and same results and it's predictable and it works, it would get pretty boring after a while. I'm always trying to learn and explore. I used to be a fashion designer in my career, so I'm used to having to work a year ahead of time and always change and move and, okay, move on to the next thing, the next best thing. So in my career, I've just gotten into that habit of always trying something new. And I think many artists do that as they learn and grow anyway. If you really have art in your soul, you want to learn and explore. Other people, if they just play it safe, that's fine too. Again, I'm not teaching you to be an artist. I'm teaching you to have mindfulness and play. And if you become an artist out of that, then fantastic. And again, I'll remind you, I'm not teaching you how to draw here. I'm teaching you how to use very few colors, very few tools, and just experimenting and learning and growing and making something of value to you for your soul. Hopefully you'll have a book like this one day that you're proud to put on a shelf and display open or keep as a tabletop book, but just something that, or later on you just keep it hidden in a book, in a cupboard for yourself. But the whole idea is take it out sometime and get lost in it, because it's very valuable. I really love these little books. I save them all, and I don't keep them hidden in a cupboard. I do display them on a shelf. So I don't want to overtalk this. I just want, I've already explained what I'm doing, so just watch what I'm doing. If you start becoming a regular subscriber and watching all my videos, you'll start to develop your own sense of where you would go with it yourself. And that would be very, very rewarding for me to hear you tell me that. I love to hear your comments. And if you were to tell me, I've watched you all year and I'm learning and growing, now look at the thing, like these are the things I'm figuring out on my own, I'd be so happy to hear that. So this area here is very bold and color blocked. The area up here is very soft, subtle, and dreamy. And I love that section. And I love that they're both different. And the reason why I want to maintain the section on the right is because that part I just circled now on the left, that's going, like I say, I'm putting bold patches there because I'm going to concentrate most of the white print in that area. So I want to maintain the fuzzy, dreamy look of the top right, to have a difference, a contrast between bold color blocking and fuzzy and dreamy. What I'm doing now is just filling in some intensity of the blue to match the values of all the other colors on the page. And as I work my way around, I don't only follow the lines that were there. If I decide I want to fill in more of the white, I do. It's all intuitive. So I've almost changed the direction of what some of that blue rope look was. I've kind of altered it already. Now, even though I'm coloring that over with a glaze of blue, if you looked closely on that page, if it was yours, you would see that there's a little bit of a fuzziness even up in there. And I love that. So I'm keeping it dreamy in the top. I'm smudging it harder with the brush up there so it's more fuzzy. And I love that there's little pitted holes in the surface of the paper. I just love that section there. That's my favorite section there that I circled for you. But I am teaching you how to explore. So what I'm doing here is adding 3 dots of blue just to balance the eye over to the right. I'm cutting away some excess tissue paper that's stuck over the edge, just cleaning up the edges of my page. And at the bottom there's a bit of edge to cut off as well. Consider this bold and loud, but it's an underpainting. Now I'm making the magic happen. This is where I put a print over, and you can already see why I went bold underneath. And having that boldness, it's subtle now, and having all that detail of white pattern is now kind of softening the look of the entire spread, because it's softening it with that hit of white with a subtle print. I started to tear, and then I remembered, no, I want to have a really fuzzy edge, so I'm using the water on the brush again, so that when I tear that away, it's very random and organic. And again, whatever you see there, the tissue that's rough on the edge, that's going to dissolve right into the paper. Now, I don't mind tearing with my hand along the left because that's along the left side of the spread that's going to possibly get cut off anyway. So you can already see how dramatic this is going to affect the entire spread. So let's put that down. And remember, we're going to be stretching that tissue print over that center fold, which is very bulky and rounded in the middle there. So when we place that down, I'll have to use that paint spreader again to hold it in place right there in the middle. And I put a lot of matte medium in the middle there too, so that it would grip along the center of the book. And you got to get this put down before that matte medium dries. So I'm using my hand to pat it down. Later I will brush it down, but before I do any of that, I want to make sure the paint spreader holds it securely along the center there. And then I can use the paint spreader to spread it around. Look at how that's dramatically altered my spread. Isn't that a blast? I just love it. And again, if you didn't do this technique, how would you even think to paint all that white around there like it? And it would be very time consuming and difficult. I just love this technique. I just love how that white detail disappears into the upper part of the spread as well. And now I'm going to do a similar, but I'm taking this check pattern instead. I like mixing up the patterns. And because it's not glued down, I'm not committed to any of it. I'm just trying to decide parts of it that I'll keep and parts of it that I won't. So I'm going to use my wet brush technique. So what I want to do is have these overlap each other, but where it gets a little messy there in the very center, right there, I don't want that. I don't want it to alter the pattern of the first print that I put down. So where they meet, I want them to blend in a way that makes sense, and whatever doesn't make sense as I glue it down, you'll see I'll scrape a little bit of that away with my fingernail. So I'm just patting it in place, but I already know right there in the middle, I don't want that interference. So you just lift it until it makes sense. See how much better that looked? Oh, I'm just love that. Now keep in mind, there's a lot of white here. It's not all staying white. If you watch my videos, you know that I love to glaze over some of that. I'm going to keep some of the white and I'm going to glaze over some of it so that the white transitions into the pattern below. There's another where I cut along the straight side because I knew that would go against the paper. But I love how this print disappears and is distressed and how it kind of just disappears towards the left. I want that to disappear towards the left of the page. So I like the straight edge with the squares going down, and then I like how it disappears. Because I want to maintain that beautiful, fuzzy, dreamy background, and I don't want these check boxes over top to interfere with that. I want them to blend. And this is looking fabulous. Just what I wanted. Really dreamy. Whereas on the bottom left and the whole left of the spread with the white print, it's not so dreamy. It's a little more dramatic. So before I go further, I'm going to cut away that tissue off the edge of the paper since it's dry. Look at that spread number 13, how romantic and dreamy it is, and how this one now is so bold and graphic. But I like to shake things up. If I don't mix it up for you, you're going to get bored. And I like to show you different options. So here we go. This week was all about bold graphic color and texture, and totally explored on this one. I didn't know where it was going to take me. It's a little busier than I usually like, but I'm going to try to make things make sense. So now that I've got all that white tissue print pasted over top, now I do the fun part of glazing. I don't want to remove all of the white from it, but I also don't want to keep all the white. The reason why I love doing these tissue print overlays is so that I can glaze some of it. And that allows even more depth and interest. So instead of just having a bunch of shapes in white over top of everything, which you could leave, I prefer to do a transition between the texture and the colors that are below. So by glazing it, and especially in this top right area where it's dreamy, I did the glaze very subtle, kept it dreamy. I don't want to touch that. I love the effect of the top right. But the whole purpose of all this white print is not to keep it white. I love to glaze and do transitions. And again, creating depth. So this is the fun part. This is where I don't have to worry about where I'm going with the spread. I know what it's going to do. I'm just coaxing a little bit of glazing now. And when I accidentally dropped a drop of that magenta down onto the wet water on the page, it did a fun spread, which I liked. So I'm going to maintain some of that on the right there. And what I'm doing is dabbing away, and I'm getting rid of some of the paint that's on the brush, smudging it around to the left. And then I want to smudge it around with my finger here. The idea is to glaze it subtly in some spots and darker in others. And again, I haven't dipped my brush in anymore. I'm just moving around that magenta that was already there. And then I want to just sort of make sure that I keep that dreamy. Love it. Doing a little down on the bottom right, but I'm not loving the bottom right of this page yet. I don't like that. It's too busy, and it really doesn't make sense. Even though the rest of the spread is busy, those lines on the bottom no longer make sense to me, even though I thought they did at the time. So I'll do something about that. Have no worries. So I put a little extra dab of glaze on the top right, and I like how that goes off the page a little darker on those squares, and makes it dreamy. And now I never did like that solid bit of not Nicolazo gold, red iron oxide. It was a little too strong right there, so I'm trying to make that make a bit more sense. So I'm trying to subdue that print as well, which is overall too busy. And by glazing over it, not only ties in with the color below, but it just softens the effect of that print. I hope you agree. So I'm still not loving that dark ridge line right there. Unfortunately, it dried pretty dark and I'm stuck with it. But the more I can add to the bottom left there, the better. And I'm trying to enhance some of this to see what makes sense. I love those first three. The rest of these I don't like. So we'll see what happens. In the meantime, I'm getting rid of the paint on the brush, smudging it around soft. Again, keeping that dreamy look on the right. And dreamy right there. And I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do. Just spreading it around everywhere to make the transition dreamy. And I'm not loving what I'm doing up there. I can tell you that right now. I don't love it. I did that to move the eye around the page, but I'm not loving that dark part. It doesn't look like the rest of the page right there. But I've got a plan for that. And I want to put a little bit more blue glaze as well over the print that's over top of the blue area, just to continue what I was doing. Not sure yet what I'll do about the left green area. I might leave that just as it is because it's already quite subtle and dreamy. Now, notice I did not make a darker blue. It's almost too transparent, so I'm going to end up doing a few layers there. But that way I can build it in layers and decide when I want to add more instead of being too dramatic. On the bottom right, I'm trying to add more blue to draw the eye to the right side of the spread. I'm still not loving this area right here. I'm committed to trying, but I don't like it. And again, I'm trying to enhance more blue right there. And again, more blue there. As it dries, I see that it's not bold enough, so I'm just glazing a little more blue. So you can see how it's jumped some of that white print further back. I'm not loving that. Let's take care of it. I'm going to get the full strength white paste, and I'm going to just cover it over as if it's a white page again. I just didn't like that. It's not what I wanted, and already I see a dramatic improvement. I don't mind keeping that little circle of dark rust right there. That's kind of interesting. It ties in with the yarn look, but the rest, I'm trying to make a cloudy transition now so that you don't see the edge of that white paint when it dries. I'm trying to add it thick right there where I need to cover, and then where it transitions, I need to make it dreamy. So over there, I just press hard with the brush and smudge it around to make it dreamy. And already I can see the result is very favorable. I'm just subduing a little bit more. I'm not going to leave that white. Again, I'm just bringing it back to the paper look as if I get a fresh start. It's already made a difference. I gave it a good blow dry because I need to keep that dry when I add more blue. And I'm just going to obliterate this bottom right corner because I just didn't like it. Full strength white paste. I'm not pressing hard because I want some of those indentations, those little speckles. I like that showing up right there. And then up there I'm smudging hard so it blends in like a cloudy effect. I like all the rest, and I don't mind those first three there, but the rest I need to get rid of. So I'm going to cover them over. And I think you'll agree it looks a lot better. Now the page makes a little more sense. It almost reminds me of a brick building with graffiti on it. And while that wet, heavy white paint is still heavy and wet, I'm using a toothpick to scrape in some grooves. And that way I'm getting a bit of a subtle pattern. And again, over there, I'm scraping in fairly heavy while it's still, I'm able to. And it's revealing the pink that was below. And I kind of like that. So now that that white is dry, I'm just dabbing some blue randomly around, and I'm letting it settle into the grooves. So it's got a real cloudy, dreamy look. And I'm doing a little bit there. And those grooves that I scraped are taking, some of that blue will settle into those scrapes and make the scraping a little more obvious. And there I'm going to add more of the red iron oxide, but I've got to make sure I keep it dreamy where it blends to the right. So now we've got a transition of the left being bold, the left center of the right spread being bold, and then transitioning into very light, airy, and dreamy. And I like that a lot. I hope you do too. Again, I'm just learning and exploring, trying to go out of my comfort zone to do things a bit more graphic, which is not usually me. So what I'm also noticing at the very end here is that I want to keep the integrity of the weight of that black, and I need a little bit of black, just a hit of it on the left side of the spread, just to tie in all that black and make sense. So I just want to do 3 little circles. I do things in 3. And that way it keeps the flow of the black going from right to middle to left. I hope you agree. And now I'm calling this done. Just a little bit more blue. Just a little bit more blue. Just to finish it off. A little more glaze to give. I'm just trying to diminish some of that print, that busyness. Being mindful not to touch that black. And down here a little bit more. Let it settle into those grooves. So I think I've saved it. It's made a dramatic transition. I've shown you what I want to. I wanted to show you bold background and then print over top and then glazing. And the rest is just showing you what to do if you don't like things. So I like that flow now of the red, of the rust. And the whole thing just makes more sense to me now. I hope you like it. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.